going to start in a few minutes here for our keynote speech. I'm just trying to wait a little bit to let everyone get seated. So I'll do a few quick announcements before we start. The first one, and if anyone's not here currently that's from Texas, let them know. The Texas sign-in sheet is at the back middle of the room on a chair. So make sure you sign that before I pick it up. A couple of other things. Make sure you silence your cell phones and don't let them sit there vibrating on the chair. If I hear a cell phone ring during the keynote speech, I'm going to have you donate some money to the AHVMA. No, just kidding. Don't let it ring. So I really want to thank our sponsors tonight, especially the VBMA, who is sponsoring our keynote speaker today. And then the other sponsors who are just as equally amazing, you can find in your app or you can find on your program and on the back page. Speaking of your app, there's some conference evaluations that we would like everyone to fill out. It really helps the conference program committee if you would fill those out and help us out to make your conference the best one possible. We do have a banquet tonight, so if you have tickets to that, make sure you bring your ticket. We have Innovarius sponsored the wine, so we have wine. And we actually have a live band that's sponsored by Adored Beast Apothecary. It's gonna be fun. All right. So another thing, our conference exhibit hall is open until 5. And make sure that you guys go on the app. Like I said, that helps us out. There is a game on there. I've been told that the prize is amazing. Apparently, I'm currently the leader on the leaderboard, so somebody beat me. Let's go. And without further ado, our keynote speaker. Just hit play or...
I started down the path to where we are today as a young boy crawling through the brush-filled canyons of San Diego, California. Back then, the little canyon at the end of the cul-de-sac was my wilderness, where I spent countless hours, often alone, captivated by the wonders of nature in a way that only a child can enjoy. There I discovered a fascinating universe that lived beneath my feet and all around me. Strange textures in my hands, on my tongue, in my nostrils. The dream of someday escaping the city and living close to nature stayed alive in the deepest recesses of my heart. Someday I would live like Grizzly Adams, I told myself. Like many boys, those dreams were sidetracked by the details of growing up. But as the years rolled by, the voice of the child within gradually became louder. I began my studies of edible and medicinal plants, spending as much time as I could hiking the mountains, deserts, and canyons with books in tow, learning about ancient healers that have been serving us since our time on Earth began. In 1989, my former wife, Mary Wolfe, and I quit our jobs in law enforcement. We cashed in all we had in retirement and moved to a remote piece of land in the Bitterroot Mountains of Montana, building a tiny cabin atop a rugged mountain ridge. We lived and studied on that mountainside for 10 years, each day learning more about how amazing and valuable wild medicinal plants really are, but more important, how they are part of an ancient system of healing that all living things have been dependent upon for millions of years. In 1994, we shifted our studies away from our own human uses of herbs to the natural needs of companion animals. And it was then that we were introduced to an amazing, love-driven scientific community of people called holistic veterinarians. We started formulating for them, amazed not just by their vast knowledge of veterinary physiology and such, but by their commitment to reach beyond the confines of conventional medical wisdom to understand the true nature of the animals they love and heal. In August of 2000, we lost our cabin and everything we owned to a devastating wildfire. Everything on our land was lost, and even to date, the trees have not regenerated. But beneath the extreme sorrow that followed that horrible event, I could hear the voice of a little boy within me. It said, "It's time to move forward, to bring your learnings to others." And I realized the little boy from the canyons of my youth will never go away, and he will never be alone either, because I found you, the holistic veterinarians. 24 years. 24 years ago, I stood in front of you as an outsider who knew something about plants and wanted to share a message. You know, some of my best teachers, my greatest teachers, the people I look up to are in this audience. And trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to say in 50 minutes to give you a message of what it's all come together to was really, really hard, you know? Putting together videos and pieces for what I've seen and witnessed both inside and outside the ranks of this room. I'm not a veterinarian, so I have this, I look at it as it's kind of an opportunity because I can step in and out, I can see what's going on, I can communicate with you without any kind of predispositions of science or politics, any of the stuff that you have to deal with professionally with your organizations and your vet boards. I don't have to worry so much about that. I can speak my mind. I'm just a lunatic from on top of a hill in Montana, right? So it's a huge honor to be here. But here's why I wanted to do this keynote, is a little bird in my mind, a little boy said, that little kid from the canyon of my youth said, this is way bigger. Your purpose is much bigger than what you may think. Much bigger than just healing animals holistically. Certainly much bigger than just finding alternatives to traditional medicine, to conventional medicine, contemporary medicines. And I'm going to share with you bit by bit what I'm talking about here. You are very important people. Not just to animals, but to all of us. So, what is our purpose? It's a big question, and it's a big question that we all have to ask ourselves over and over again, because purpose is really important. Purpose is what drives us. Purpose is what gives us satisfaction. Purpose is what keeps us sane. And I bring this up because it wasn't long ago that I learned about compassion fatigue syndrome, the profound emotional and physical erosion that takes place when helpers are unable to refuel and regenerate quickly enough. And I also learned, much to my sorrow, that people in this room, the veterinarians in this room, are 3.5% times higher likely to commit suicide than other professions. 3.5 times higher than the average population. And I told that to some of my friends, I told that to lots of my friends. They said, veterinarians? Why? I know why. You've got an extraordinarily hard job. First, you spent upwards of 8 years, maybe more, in school to learn the ins and outs of medicine, not just for one system, not just for the human body, but for multiple systems, for all these different animals. And you did it, you made this decision to do animals instead of humans out of love and compassion. Because like me, there's a little child inside of you that prompted you to come here, to be in this room today. But what differs is, the human doctor will know their patients over years, and they'll see them live, and they'll help them heal, and eventually, they'll pass away, and you'll lose a few, over the course of a career. You'll see patients pass away, but you bring these animals into life that only have a short period to be with us to begin with. You try to mitigate all the different issues that have to do with the way that we've historically treated these animals and fed these animals. And then, you bring them to health, you bring them to birth, you get to know them, they become your friends, and like anything in the world, they eventually die. Death comes. But the difference with you is then you're called upon to bring death over and over and over again over the course of your career. And so what I've seen, and I was in law enforcement years ago, and I was in emergency medicine. I've seen lots of suffering, and I know how to shut myself off and try to, just nullify my emotions to that. And sometimes we get so good at that we forget the purpose of why we're here, and we forget what our heart is telling us. And I want to bring that spirit back to you today. I want you to think back right now of the moment in your life when you made that critical decision. I'm not going to just be a doctor. I'm going to be an animal doctor. And why? What drove you to be here? Now, everybody in this audience, by virtue of the fact that you are here, not at a vet conference, but at the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association's conference, You are here for a greater purpose than just veterinary medicine. You see, in order to be a holistic veterinarian, you have to put human needs aside long enough to understand the true natural needs of animals. And if you want to do that holistically, if you want to do that looking at the big picture, you also have to take into account, fully into account, not just the animal itself, but every aspect of its being, its environment, the people that take care of it, the food they eat. Everything has to be taken in, because everything in our own lives as well affects our health. If the health of our surroundings is not good, we're not healthy either. Animals present us with this unique opportunity that I'm going to share with you today, that I've identified, that I've thought up, that is true. You know, I mean, I say that because 24 years of digging through my brain and through my heart, trying to unravel all of the things I've seen and bring it to you. It's not easy, but it's definitely rewarding. So let me start with what I learned about the bigger picture. I'll start with back on the land in Montana. I went there to escape the rat race. I went there with a love of plants, already an herbalist. I knew how to make my own medicines. I expected to find plants and things that I couldn't find anywhere else. I expected the experience of Grizzly Adams, you know? But when I got there, I found that it wasn't just about plants, it's about the system. This giant, very interdependent, totally independent system, delicate, balanced system that we call Earth. I learned that the greatest value of herbal medicines isn't contained within their chemistries, it's contained with the connection to where they come from. Because it all encompasses what I'm calling holistic health today. You look at the Earth, it starts with minerals with a molten base. Third rock from the sun, most people think. Then you look at what happens. Fungi, the microbiome that's been around for millions, billions of years, starts breaking down the Earth into forms that can propagate seeds, to make them germinate, to put roots into the Earth and bring the nutrients of the Earth up into their tissues, where photosynthesis from the sun brings them energy for us to eat and everything above them and serve the pollinators, the animals, everything. And then in turn, the animals do their job at bringing things back. It's a big circle. You see, holistic healing, holistic wellness, and this is often where we get lost. Holistic wellness and healing is never unilaterally administered. It's always shared amongst everything, living or not. In the forest, we see animals utilizing the plants, selecting the ones for medicine even, zoopharmacognosy. They have the ability to actually select the medicines they need, dose themselves, and stop when they need to stop, right? Intuitively, they don't have to think about it. And in so doing, they're working within this amazing intuitive system by which even when they expel their feces, they're feeding the environment. Fertilizer. Their bodies feed the environment. If salmon didn't swim upstream into the ecosystems that they swim into and die, those ecosystems would suffer or maybe even fail because the nourishment, the nutrients that are required by that ecology wouldn't be there of that rotting fish. All the way from the ocean, the mountains of the western United States are served from the ocean. It's all a big living organism we call Gaia, or Earth. So the role of the holistic veterinarian, in my mind, goes way deeper than you might think today. My hope is when you walk out of this room, you're going to understand just how big that is. When I was on the land in Montana, I wrote my first book. It's called the Eco-Herbalist Field Book. You won't see it, it's out of print. I published this book in 1993, and I did it on a Canon word processor that I had hooked up to a little solar panel on top of my house. And back then, you know, it wasn't like books on demand or anything like that. I had to print them out, get what were called blue lines made, which are reversals of pages, And then I traveled all over the western United States to publishers with books that weren't even printed yet and said, look at this, this is my book. And what the book was about, it wasn't real popular among herbalists at the time, a lot of the wildcrafters, because that's what I was doing. The way we sustained ourselves on that mountainside was to harvest medicinal plants for use by the nutraceutical industries, by the pharmaceutical industry, by the natural products industry. I was one of the guys that went out and sourced, in an ecological way, an earth-friendly way, medicinal plants for industry. And what happened is, I started getting letters. There weren't phones. I didn't have a phone up there. The first phone I had was one of those AT&T bag phones. Does anybody remember those things? Anyone old enough for those? I had to run on top of a mountain a quarter of a mile behind my cabin so I could get like 1 bar of signal to call mom and, down in California. And I was sweating because it was like $3.50, $4 a minute. And I lived on $200 a month for like 5 years, right? And so I get these letters from these herb companies that say stuff like, our herbs are harvested or wildcrafted with the earth in mind, ethically wildcrafted. And they'd send me letters like, okay, we need 400 pounds of dried arnica cordifolia and we need it next week, thanks, bye. They didn't know if I was renting a John Deere tractor or using dynamite or, clear-cutting land to get what they needed. And it really bugged me. And it also bugged me too because at the best efforts, the herbalists that were also wildcrafting and a lot of the organizations, not all of them, but a lot of them, they would come up with mathematical formulas on what would be deemed ethical in nature, right? We see a stand of 10 plants, we're only going to take 2 or 3 and leave the rest for nature and whoever comes next. But that doesn't take into account the fact that everything else in the forest is using those plants. Not just for food, but for shelter, for pollination, for symbiotic relationships between big trees and little things. We think on the grand level as humans of what is important. We think of the grand, mighty sequoia redwoods, for instance, right? Giant trees, ancient, old. But we don't think about the fact that we're standing on top of plants that might be 200 years old that are actually opening up the soil structure, introducing oxygen and nutrients and a fungal relationship in the soil beneath the feet of those giant redwoods that's maintaining life. Everything in nature is important. It doesn't matter the size. Anyone here that's worried about drug-resistant bacteria knows what I mean. Been around since the dinosaurs, right? We might have killed the dinosaurs. It might not have been a meteor. They're still here. Everything is part of the design of nature. It needs to be respected. And so what I've figured out with this book is I identified the fact that at our best, we're anthropocentric when we walk into a forest. It's a big word, but basically it means that the final aim of what we're doing, whether we're conscious of it or not, is to serve us, to serve humanity. We think of ethics. Here's a really rash or a big example. We cut down a forest and we plant a tree farm in its place. We feel good that the trees are growing back, but we don't take into consideration the impact of what happened beneath those trees, but we feel better. We put an aspirin to our conscience. And everything we tend to do, and we tend to be that. I call it the anthropocentric beast in that book. And what I realized as I progressed in my wildcrafting and taking note not just of what I was harvesting and how much I was harvesting, but what else was using the plants, what else was monitoring the plants for the mice that would run out from beneath the stand, everything. I started to realize that if the anthropocentric beast was exposed under the light of consciousness, of awareness, then maybe we can never really fit into nature completely into the circle of life, but we'll be a much kinder, friendlier anthropocentric beast when we do. See, in nature, I don't know if you've noticed this, but when you walk into a meadow or you walk into any natural scenario, everything around you doesn't view you as just a predator. It's like, oh my God, there's one of those things. They fly off, they run scurrying into the brush. I've gone into meadows many times and I've seen predators and prey in peace on opposite sides of the meadow. You put a human into the scenario, totally different situation. So I put this slide in fairly late in the progression of writing this keynote, but it kind of sets the stage of what holistic medicine is really about. It's about awareness and making connection with everything that sustains us, everything. And as I'll explain to you today, you're in a unique situation because you work for animals, with animals. Very important, which I will explain. But before we get there, let's take a quick look at where we've come from. Let's look at the old days. I think you'll like this. Who remembers
To
this?
your dog, Gaines burgers are the same as regular canned dog food. To you, one's better because there's no lugging cans home. To your dog, Gaines burgers are the same as canned because they're both meaty. To you, one's better because there's no can to open. To your dog, Gaines burgers are the same as canned dog food for vegetables, vitamins, and minerals. Gaines burgers are the same to him, so they're better for you. Gaines burgers, the canned dog food without the can.
How many people remember that? That's from the 70s, early 70s. So I'm not beating up on Gaines at all here. You know, I heard that Gaines is making a comeback, and I'm sure they won't be using that ad. Right? But what we see here is like, you know, it's saying it's easier for us, so it's better for him. And now we're comfortable. That's okay. We're serving ourselves, and we still see it. We see ourselves walking through the aisles of supermarkets looking at pet food, and you see bags with all kinds of, you know, pretty little things on it, and kibbles that look like little steaks in different colors, and, you know, and beautiful pictures of vegetables falling out of the air and all this other cool stuff. And who do you think that is there for? Do you think the dog cares? It's all about us, right? It's our anthropocentricity, so to speak. So fortunately, people started to really bond with these animals in a big way. It kept growing and growing and growing. The deeper appreciation, even the unthought of appreciation. People really love their animals. It goes straight to their heart, right? It's not like they've been around for a little while. I mean, we've had animals in our lives for a very long time. I mean, they bring us joy. They bring us happiness. They're always a clown, right? They teach us how to smile. They bring us, you know, a shoulder to lean on, a warm place to be, somebody who will listen to our radio show with us, listen to our silliness. They're great companions. They help us smile and laugh, right? But the truth is now, we're starting to see them different. They're bringing us through the worst of times, but the true colors of what these animals are finally fading into focus in a pretty significant way. People are more discriminating than ever about what they feed their animals. The problem is, it's not enough. It's not enough just to be aware of your love of animals. But, with that said, how many people here have heard of the Human Animal Bond Research Institute? Heard of that organization? So this is a collaborative effort. It was originally spearheaded, I believe, by Zotis and the American Pet Products Association. And it's a nonprofit. And it's based on educating people on how vitally important companion animals really are to human health. It's not just that they bring us joy, they're actually teaching us values that we can't teach our kids. Unconditional love, selflessness, living in the moment, not living in anticipation of death, not being afraid of whatever your neighbor's beliefs are and such. They're teaching us all kinds of things, but it goes beyond that. These guys have put together a database that's totally free and totally accessible to veterinarians. And it's identified a lot of different things on a scientific level. It's amazing what they found, and this is very good research. I mean, it's good, solid science. Alzheimer's disease improves quality of life for the sufferer as well as the immediate network of caregivers. Healthy aging. Studies have shown that strong attachment to a pet was associated with less depression among elderly people. It just goes on. Social isolation and loneliness, they help bring us together. Cardiovascular health, they help lower our blood pressure, help make us healthier physically. PTSD and trauma. reduce depression, companionship, huge stuff. Autism, spectrum disorders, reduced anxiety, increased social awareness, improved social behaviors and interactions with peers, more comfortable under pressure. They teach us and bring all kinds of things to us. And, you know, this organization's created this whole collection. I have no affiliation with them, I'm just impressed. They have all these tools for you to share with your clients to make them aware of just how important these animals really are to humanity, to humankind. Take a look at this video they produced. I think you'll love it.
Right now, millions of humans are suffering from solo binge watching, empty Instagram feeds, and broken exercise goals. But it doesn't have to be that way. We pets can give them the life they deserve. A life with reduced anxiety and depression, better heart health, and increased social interaction. It's not too late. Adopt a human today.
It's so true. They're saving our lives, and you're saving theirs. Ladies and gentlemen, you're healing the healers. Think about that for a second. And check these guys out. They've got all kinds of really cool stuff. This is a brochure you can download online, another brochure. They call it the Pet Effect. You can hand these out to your clients. You can put them in your waiting room. They've got different posters, infographics that you can download, print out, and post on your walls. You can probably order them from you or get them blown up. Really good, solid, science-based evidence that shows that these animals are actually really healing us. They're not just clowns. So, we have a greater awareness of that now, and it's growing. But we still have another thing that we have that we created. It's called humanization. This is anthropomorphism. This is where we basically ascribe human characteristics to non-human traits, non-human things. And you know, on the surface, it's cute, it's cool. Everybody does it, I do it, I love it. You know, I mean, we give them human names. You know, this dude's wearing sunglasses and he's at a picnic and he's probably at his family's picnic, and I don't know if he likes blueberries or grapes or whatever he's eating there or not, but that's okay. But here's a problem. The anthropocentric beast is rearing his head again. Take a look at this study. I don't know how well you can read that, but I'll read what it is. It's a study from petfoodindustry.com from 2017. U.S. Pet Food Market Report reveals pet humanization trend. And on the second it says, with amazing frequency on the rise among Americans, it seems that snacking trend may be extending to the pets. Right? 1 in 11 pet owners say they feed their pet toppers as sauce and gravy as a snack or a treat or for rewards and such. And you know, on the surface and in the core of that, that's okay. But what are we doing? What does that trend mean, really? Real picture came off the news just a couple days ago, right? And how many people, I just came from Super Zoo, the big pet industry pet show in Las Vegas. It's really a cool place to visit. You'll see all kinds of weird stuff there. But really what I see a lot that really kind of disturbs me along this line is you'll see people, oftentimes not in the best of physical shape, walking around with their dogs and pets in strollers because it's easier for them. Their dogs and their pets aren't getting exercise because it's easier for the pet owner or because it's cute, right? Not good. The anthropocentric beast raises its head, and we're not serving those animals the way we should be. So here's what it looks like in reality. Nearly 59% of cats and 54% of dogs, equaling an estimated 50.5 million cats and almost 42 million dogs, are at risk for weight-related disorders. 160 million Americans, people, are either obese or overweight. Nearly 3/4 of American men and more than 60% of women are obese or overweight. 30% of all people will develop cancer in their lifetime, and almost half of dogs over the age of 10 will develop a cancer. So we think of that, we think of the humanization trend, we think about what we're feeding them and our eating habits and everything else that we bestow upon them, and then we couple it with another disturbing list of statistics. This is from the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control. 80% of premature heart disease, stroke, and diabetes can be prevented, and 40% of cancer can be prevented. I think that's low, actually. But the important thing with this is, if something can be prevented by us, what does that mean? That means we can control the cause. And we can only control things that we are responsible for. So that means that 80% of chronically ill animals with these diseases and many others are chronically ill because of what is being passed along from the humankind to them. We're loving them to death, so to speak, right? So where does this all fit in for you, the holistic pet owner? I went through hundreds of these things, right? And I don't know about you, but that little dog chasing that chuck wagon that comes out of the TV, was he really chasing it for what's inside the wagon? Or did he want to eat the little tiny bite-sized horses and maybe the dude with the whip because he wasn't getting the right nutrition, right? Anyway, I'm off base, okay? So there's a much bigger picture even still. I mean, we've looked at a pretty big picture already. But it gets bigger, bigger and bigger, and our purpose is even greater. Looking for the bigger picture to find a greater purpose. Let's go back to the child of our past. How many people here have witnessed what happens when a little child is first introduced to an aspect of nature? It could be a blade of grass. It's fascinating, the texture. It could be an animal out of peripheral vision, stops them in their tracks before they can even say or make a sound. They're attracted to nature. They're drawn to it. They're connected to it, at least until about the age of 4. Then things start to change. We start to disconnect. Nature deficit disorder is a new term. It's not that new because this is a 2002 study from England that basically says that in Britain, children could correctly identify about 32% of the wild animals in their country, but they could even better 78% Pokemon characters, right? So our children are being taught about rare and endangered animals. It's in school. They learn about animal species on TV, but they're learning it by and large through a two-dimensional medium, through a screen. They need to touch and feel and understand not just the touch of the animal, but the nature of the animal. You are here to treat and maintain the nature of animals. You're not here to treat symptoms of disease. You're in the wrong conference if you are, if that's your intent. You're here to treat systems. You're here to maintain systems. You're here to help people find a way back into a circle of life that we've been so disconnected from for so many years, millions of years. So how can we bring this back? Who can bring this back? Who can bring people into awareness and connection with nature? Before I get there, let's look at some other issues that are kicking around right now. Right now we're seeing, 550 some odd dogs have recently been diagnosed with dilated cardiomyopathy because they think they're eating too many legumes in their diet. And to me, that makes some sense. I mean, first of all, there's 80 million dogs and we're only seeing 550 something, right? Seems like a small number, but you know what that tells me? Is that people are more sensitive enough to where only 550 are noticed. It used to take thousands and thousands before it made the news. But part of it is, we see, how do we find our way out of this? Look at the environmental impact of feeding meat to companion dogs and cats. There's 89.7 million dogs and 94.2 million cats living in American households. Studies show that meat-heavy diet consumed by companion animals is having an impact equivalent to driving 13.6 million cars a year. Our pets. If dogs and cats were their own country, they would rank number 5 in global meat consumption. And 25 to 30% of the total meat produced each year, I didn't know this, is fed to animals. That would be hoof weight on the hoof or whatever, byproducts and everything else. And so you think, oh my gosh, we're trying to find answers through this. We're trying to find and respect the true nature of these animals that we're trying to heal. What are we going to do? Make cats into vegans or something? We're going to start feeding nothing but vegetables to carnivores? How are we going to find our way through this? So we're trying to figure this out while at the same time too many people and too many companies are using these really low-grade meat byproducts, and I mean that's just encouraging bad behavior to begin with, the stuff that happens in slaughterhouses and feedlots and the stuff that goes in the mouths of animals. But here's another little tidbit that is also disturbing. The supply chains, the food sources on this planet are the same for everybody. We are eating from the same food sources as the dogs, cats, horses, rabbits, everything on this planet. We're sharing it, right? It's no different. So years ago, I was asked to write an article about essential fatty acids for a big pet food or a big pet magazine. It's not around anymore. And I did. And one of the things I said was, bless the kibble manufacturers for putting omega-3 oils in their foods. But here's what I see as an issue, because I know omega-3s go rancid very quickly. They oxidize. So what I said in the article is, that's great. I'm glad that they're making an effort to put omega-3s in because they really are essential fatty acids. AHVMA has just decided that they're going to actually call essential fatty acids essential to nutrition. They got it, right? So I said, bless their hearts, but the truth is once you open a bag or you start feeding, the clock is ticking. The value of those essential fatty acids in that fish oil or whatever they're using is decreasing exponentially over time. And it published, right? Nice article. 2 days after it hit the streets and the magazine stands, I got a phone call, not from my editor, but from the publisher of the entire group, 17 magazines. They said, Greg, we want you to retract what you said about fatty acids going rancid and going bad. Our sponsors require you to apologize and write an apologetic article. And we have grave concerns about this, Greg. So my response was, I'll be happy to play checkers with the logo, but I'm not writing for your magazine anymore, and I'm going to get to the bottom of this. So I did. I went to work and I started researching the supply chain. And what I found out was that the fish meal used back then to boost omega-3s, I suspected it's probably the same now, came from Asia, which is fine. It's not where something is from. It's all in the analytics of what it really is. We have that capability. But what wasn't disclosed to the pet food manufacturers is that before that fish meal, high in omega-3s, was shipped to the United States, it was preserved with ethoxyquin. Ethoxyquin is a preservative that was invented by the Monsanto Corporation as a plastic hardener for carpets, right? And it was determined because it creates this impervious coating and protective barrier against oxidation that we could spray it on grains and we could put stuff in silos for years without it going bad. I mean, we're still eating ethoxyquin. But it also has neurotoxic and liver toxic qualities that are really bad for us and for animals, right? So I exposed that in another magazine. But in the process of studying that, at first I realized that there is no requirement, even to date, to disclose everything that is in a food ingredient for the pet industry and the supply chain. If it says meat meal on it, you're at basically whoever's collecting or buying or putting it in their product is really on the hook to determine if it really is clean. Not the person selling it to you, the company selling it to you, no requirement there. But as I looked further in, I started realizing, I looked further into the whole byproduct issue, and you know what I found out? I found out, you've heard all the horror stories, the dark horror stories about byproducts, right? Where they come from, what they can be, meat meals. I mean, byproducts come from the human slaughter process, meaning that they're the waste from our food. Meat meal can be anything else. Roadkill, euthanized pets, anything, right? That's bad enough, but what I found out is that there actually is a level of poor quality that is actually rejected by big box pet food companies. They say, no, this isn't good enough for us. I mean, the worst of the worst, the $2 bag stuff, right? You know where it goes? I would have thought, oh, that must go in a landfill. That's terrible. No, it goes back to Asia or wherever, and it's fed to the shrimp and salmon that we buy at Costco. So the whole food supply just goes around in a big circle back to us. Take a look at this slide. Close to 30% of the world's food production goes to waste. 30%, folks. Not 3, it's not a typo. Equal to 1.3 billion tons of food and nearly $990 billion every year. In the USA alone, Americans wasted $160 billion worth of food, upwards of 40% of the entire food supply in this country. Uneaten food represents the single largest component of U.S. municipal solid waste, where it accounts for a large portion of U.S. methane emissions, the same thing that is causing the greenhouse gases from cattle farming. And by the way, you know, the Amazon and Africa and the rainforest are on fire right now. Tens of thousands of fires are burning as I speak, partly because people lit them to make room for cattle, but because those forests are drier than they've ever been and they've lost control of them, right? To grow soybeans and to raise cattle. So, here's the biggest part. Americans spend as much as $2,600 per year on food they waste. This is food that goes into landfills, folks. It rots and creates methane gas. About the same as what the average household spends on commercial pet foods. So we're throwing away human suitable food, good food, the top of the food supply. 40% of it's going to waste while we feed our animals byproducts and crap. There has to be a better system here. There has to be a way to reduce this waste, to put it in the mouths of the animals we love, and to bring health to them. We have to take control. So, how do we do that? By connecting through the heart. You know, one of the biggest problems of being human is we have to overthink everything. We have to find a solution. We have to find validation. We have to find an understanding. We have to have a scientific basis. And what happens is we end up, our brain pretty much, you know, holds our heart at gunpoint. Do as I say. And we're taught that as kids. We're taught that through life. Don't sit around daydreaming. Don't be a fool. Don't be a foolish heart. Be rational. Think things through. There's another truth, and this is where the power, your power, comes from. Everything that goes in the left side of our brain requires this nuts and bolts processing where we have to validate it by our own disciplines, our own prejudices, the sciences we've learned, our religions, what our parents have told us, rumors. Everything else has to be processed for us to make a decision, and it gives us the opportunity to say, okay, I'm not going there, I'm not gonna listen, I'm just gonna, you know, make it kind of go away. I'll just, you know, put my head in the sand, it's okay. I'm willing to drink out of a plastic cup because I can rationalize it somehow. But on the other side of the brain, things that go through the heart, and yes, it has been shown that the heart and the brain are linked. That broken heart really does talk to the brain and the emotions. That feeling with the heart is real. But you know what the most important thing is here? Is when it goes to the heart, through the heartstrings, it goes straight into memory and action. That's why you hear all these people say, I take better care of my animals, I love them so much, I'll do anything I can for them. It's true because it's going through their heartstring instead of through the rational side of their brain. And so, here's the power that you have. People and animals are linked like never before, and I firmly believe that the companion animals in our lives are here to provide a link to the natural world that we are disconnected from. They bring nature into our homes. And if we treat them holistically and care for them holistically, we are forced to think outside of ourselves and think about them and the world they come from and the natural systems that support them. So you, the holistic veterinarians, who have dedicated your careers to working holistically, have the power to reach past or around that rational brain with your clients and say, hey, did you know that, your dog has probably got a chronic disease or might have something relative to what's sprayed on your park or under your sink or on your lawn or in your carpet or in the food you're feeding? And by the way, 40% of all the food we use is going to waste. Why don't we create some kind of a supplement system and to make that work? It's powerful, folks. You have the capacity to heal this planet. You have the capacity to reach around, push the anthropocentric beast out of the way, and talk to your clients so they can live by their heart and follow what's in their heart to the answers that will link them to subjects that otherwise they might not listen to because of politics and fake news, hoaxes, whatever, right? It's a direct heartstring. You're not just healing animals, folks. You're healing humankind. You're healing the human condition. You're very, very powerful. I can't think of any group of people in this whole scenario, this whole environmental wreck that we're in, has more power than the holistic veterinarian does because of this. It's huge. And so, I know we're running out of time. I'm pushing wrong buttons. Animals join the global community in a common bond of love. They bring us all together. I've been around the world. My family and I have counted in the last just few years, really, 16 countries, right? And everywhere we've been, we see the same thing. This is Turkey, where they really revere cats as a huge lift for their community. Everybody loves cats in these squares in Turkey, right? Everywhere I go is a community of like-minded, like-hearted people that feel the same way we do. And when the subject turns to their animals, guess what? It's all that matters. We can use them for getting along. If we can't solve our own problems ourselves, obviously we're having trouble. We have trouble communicating with each other. We have trouble convincing of each other of our beliefs or our sciences or truths. Then ask the dog to do it for us. They can, through you. A scientific evidence-based approach is not enough. One of the biggest problems we have right now is that, much of what we consider scientific validation and what we find to satisfy our belief systems is based in yesterday's discoveries. And without imagination, compassion, and love leading us, we're like sailing ships on a water with no wind. We just sit around waiting for the wind to blow in. So what I propose is we either make the wind or we jump off and we swim to shore and make it happen. But it's you, folks. You're beautiful people. You're way more powerful. Your purpose is way bigger than you probably ever guessed. You're here to heal the healers, everyone. It's been an amazing 24 years being part of it, helping to serve you, watching you, watching everything evolve, and watch this amazing revolution occur. I was worried I couldn't do this presentation today. I sat out by the water and cried because I thought, I got to pull it together. This is big. So I'm going to leave you with a giant thank you, but something else, a little gift that I produced for you. And what the heck, it's Nashville, right? So I produced and performed a little music video for you. And here it is. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, bright blessed day, dark sacred night. I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, singing, how do you do? They're really saying is I love you. I hear babies crying, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yeah, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's you. Thank you.
Finding your visibility in today's climate with website creation, hosting, SEO and social media management, telephone greetings and VoIP services, and online video production.